What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Nick with Leverage Media, and welcome to another episode of Path to a Million podcast. I'm here with a new friend of mine, Dr. Dan Bay with CloseForChiro. Dr. Dan, say hello to the people.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Nick, great podcast. Thanks for having me on today. Totally stoked.
Absolutely, man. Well, tell people a little bit about you. You are a chiropractor. You have a program called CloseForChiro, which I'm sure pretty much everyone knows about. So just kind of give them a little bit of background of where you came from, what you're doing now.
All right. Hello, chiropractors out there. This is Dr. Daniel Bay, CloseForChiro, CEO, head honcho, although I have plenty of people that tell me and shoot me down when they ever have a chance. It's a great thing about having a team behind you. I do also am in full-time practice, although my practice is my side gig and 𝒕𝒓𝒆𝒃 is my main gig. And I just stay in practice just to never lose touch of how patients are thinking and feeling. And really, it's kind of like the experimental world of what we do in 𝒕𝒓𝒄𝒃. So thanks for having me on once again. Hello to everyone out there.
Awesome. So you graduated from Life. What year did you graduate from?
I graduated from Life in 2001.
Oh, so it's you look so much younger than I do. So I feel like getting out of practice, maybe I should have done it like sooner. And
well, it's probably because I got the Asian genes. And number two, it's probably because I can't grow facial hair like you, Dr. Nick.
Well, fair enough. My best friend in chiropractic school is Asian, and he also looks exactly the same as when we were in chiropractic school.
Right. But then what actually happens is we look good, and then overnight we look like total crap. So I'm just waiting for that day.
Big shout out to Ted Tang on that one. So anyway, so 2001, did you start in practice right away? Did you do an associateship? What was the process there?
Yes. So I grew up in chiro school as a complete and utter gondroid. I mean, I was Gonstead all the way. So I just had full steam ahead, head first, Gonstead Clinic, Mount Horeb, the whole 9 yards. And I hooked up with one of my biggest influences in chiropractic, Dr. David Rowe in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I worked with him under his tutelage for, I would say, about 7 to 8 years until I moved to the wonderful city of Chicago, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, Dr. Nick.
Yep.
I've been here ever since.
Nice. Are you from Chicago, or are you just? No,
I'm born and raised East Coast, New York City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriend is an attorney, so she has to go to court. So we're kind of like stuck here. But like, if I could live anywhere, it'd be the city. So I love getting over there. So you were associated in New York City, moved to Chicago, and opened up your first clinic here.
Yeah. So I actually worked in a group practice right out leaving New York City in Chicago, and I wish could tell everyone it was all peaches and cream. But when I moved here and started working is when I had the most amount of trouble in my professional career, to the point where I almost quit it. And that was really the thing that actually shaped what I'm doing today back in, I would say, 2008, 2007.
So you graduated in 2001. You spent a good amount of time in New York. So you were there 5-6 years, moved to Chicago. So you started in practice in Chicago right around the same time that I did. And that was especially like in a bigger city. I would imagine that was a tougher time economically, with kind of the economy collapsing. Like in Springfield, we didn't feel it as much, but in the bigger cities, I would imagine it was probably a little bit tougher.
Totally. And you remember what happened during that time. Mm-hmm. So it was tough for everyone all around. But when I moved to this area, obviously it was brand new. I didn't know much, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And I remember the day, actually this happened in New York City, and it followed me to Chicago, was the fact that, in a 3-month period, I would have seen over 100 new patients. And I don't care where you are in the world, that's a lot of new ones. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the 3-month period, I was only left with 9 of them that accepted my recommendations, that actually became a part of the practice. So that was a huge problem. And even back then, I didn't understand that to be a problem. I just thought, I didn't know, is that the industry average? It just didn't feel right, to the point where I felt all the things that you should never feel as a professional is undeserving and I'm not good enough and I suck and all those things. And I was still coaching with people at the time, spending an amazing amount of money on coaching. And I'm sure you've been there, Dr. Nick. And it was a really bad time during that time, you know, looking back at it.
Yeah. So 9 out of 100 in terms of like they started a care plan.
Yes.
Wow. That is low.
That is low.
Yeah. But that is also a big advantage of now compared to back then, is now with like all the Facebook groups and like we're so much more connected to other people in the profession than I think we were back then.
Yes.
Now it's like you can kind of see how other successful people are doing it. And you kind of have a sense of like what normal is, what good is. Yeah. And you don't wonder like, oh, is 9 good? I don't know. You know?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right about that. Because back then it took me a whole year to figure out like that was not good. Right. And now, you know, because of your, as you said, like social media, like you pit yourself against the next guy. You say, okay, that's okay. That's not good. That's really good. So I guess we didn't have that back then, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes that might be a bad thing though, to like, you know, you're competing against what are probably inflated numbers anyway.
Correct. But, right. Because we call it Chiro numbers, right?
That's right. So you get to Chicago and you join the group practice and you said you were close to quitting. What was it that was creating such a problem?
Yeah. I got overwhelmed with the rejection. To be honest, I got overwhelmed with an amazing amount of excuses on why these people could not start care with me when I knew that this thing called chiropractic was absolutely, emphatically, and without a doubt an answer to their particular problems. And I knew that. So it was twofold. It was number one, I went home just feeling completely and utterly defeated day after day after day with every no that I got from every person that came in to see me. And on top of that, once they did say no, it made me question the validity and the importance of chiropractic. Like I really doubted it. And, you know, I remember the days when I used to go home and be like, maybe I'm in the wrong profession. Maybe this thing called chiropractic isn't what it was all cracked up to be. And then I find myself on friggin' what's that guy? Quack Watch, and you know, and I went down that whole rabbit hole, man. And I remember because I sat in my office that day and I said, you know, I might have to do something else. And that's when the epiphany happened, because I just so happened a patient came in, which was he was in real estate, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to this sales thing. And I was thinking, sales. Yeah, yuck, you know.
Right.
And I never even knew that I was looking at in my own life is that I had a sales problem, you know. And that's what started, you know, picking off light bulbs. And I was like, okay, well, how do they do it? So that's when I started looking at other industries on how they sell their services or sell their products. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, at the time, there was no one in our industry that actually taught sales. And if they did, they always taught it in a roundabout kind of like you're selling, but you're not selling. It was always like, you know, we need to protect our businesses and try to get more revenue, but you don't really want to. The contradictions were just enormous, and it confused me even more. That's why I had to look outside the profession. Real estate, auto, pharmaceutical, that's pharmaceutical sales and also medical sales. Mm-hmm. These are industries that have sales nailed down. And I just said to myself, man, these industries that are outselling chiropractic like hand over fist, 100-fold, are representing products and services that absolutely suck, right? Right. That are hurting us. Yet my own industry hasn't even embraced this concept called sales yet. And that's where it all started. That was over 10 years ago. And so I just threw myself into sales training mode, not in chiropractic. And so what we do now essentially is sales adapted for the industry and only for the industry.
And go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
This is one of the things that I think that I've kind of noticed in my career is even just a little bit of structure, even just a little bit of sales and packaging can make a huge difference right away. How quickly, once you started, you know, diving into the sales world, did you start to see a difference in terms of your ability to get people to yes?
Well, you nailed it immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately, because I was winging it every single day, and I thought people said yes for reasons that were not the right reasons. So I spent a lot of time trying to sell without calling it sales, by being liked. And in chiropractic, that's such a cancer, because we will get chiseled every day in practice, trying to become liked by our patients, but losing respect at the same time. And we can't do that, because as professionals, we always have to, especially clinically, like we have to exert some amount of influence in order for them to do what we ask them to do, even if they don't actually want to do it. So that respect factor I was losing. So as soon as I realized that, and like you said, Nick, having some structure to it, it got my head off of all the negative thoughts in my head on what could go wrong. And I'll give you the example. I don't know. Do you golf, Dr. Nick?
Yeah.
Okay. So a 3-foot putt. I mean, you talk about negative thoughts. It's like, it's a simple 3-foot putt, but how in the world in that span of 10 seconds, does every negative thought creep in? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's what's happening in most of our colleagues, I think, in the industry today worldwide, is that since there's no structure, there's nothing to distract you from the negative thoughts that classically and will inevitably creep in when you're trying to present something as important as chiropractic care for their patients, and also worried about payroll, worried about the mortgage, and all the financial stresses that we feel every single day.
What do you think is the easiest switch for them to make when they finally realize they're just like, man, I'm tired of closing at 30, 40, 50%, whatever it is. And I see everybody else that's closing at 80%. And I just want people to get the care, and I'm willing to start the process. What's the one thing that really flips for them? That's the quickest win that can start to get them on the path to where they want to be. Dr.
Nick, by the way, you're a great interviewer.
Oh,
I've done a lot of these. Okay. Just so you're a great interviewer, because that is a great question. And I think anytime, just as an aside,
Dan, you're also a great salesperson. You make me feel really good about myself.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. The one thing is, and this is really important, if you're writing this down, I would write this down and highlight it, is you have to say to yourself, sales is a thing. It's a real thing. It's a topic of study. Wharton School of Business at UPenn. Sales is a thing. People actually study sales, and some people call it different things, but it is what it is. In certain academic institution, they call it psychoeconomics or something like that.
Yeah.
It is a thing, and it needs to be studied, and it needs to be, you have to accept that it is an absolute thing. And if you do that, what happens is you open Pandora's box and all the information about sales that prior you have essentially just blocked out and never let into your, conscious and subconscious mind. And by doing so, just understand that sales is a thing, then you pick up all of the strategies of sales that you never learned before. Strategies are plentiful. They're all out there, but they'll never enter you until you just sit by yourself and be like, oh, sales is a thing. Marketing is a thing. No one has a problem with that.
Right.
Technique is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Business management is a thing.
Yeah.
Human resources is a thing. But somehow in our industry anyway, we've left sales out of this equation.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, I'm a common denominator kind of guy. And if our industry just accepts as a whole, oh, sales is a thing, and get past all the negative, antiquated viewpoint on sales, I mean, we're going to hit the critical mass. I'm so sure of that, because that's the one thing that we're missing.
I totally agree. And it's been one of the frustrations throughout my career. When I first started, me personally seeing patients, and then as I started to add associates into the practice, that a lot of people's belief on money and value and all of these things start to creep in. And now you're managing someone's psyche, as an employee. And it's always been such a frustration for me. And I heard somebody say this, and I think I heard somebody say this recently, might have been on the podcast, that sales is not something that you do to someone. It's something that you do for them. And we talk a little bit about that because I would imagine that you agree with that statement. And I think that is such an important, that really like resonated with me when I heard it, that especially with chiropractic, when we know we have the perfect solution for these people that we're delivering care plans to. So how do you think about that, and how can people like make that switch in their mind to think about it as like doing it for someone?
Awesome. So it's funny you said that, because we're going to take credit where credit is due. We've said that.
I haven't heard it from you. I don't know.
Closing is something that you do for them, not something that you do to them. And that is a very clear distinction, because I think the negative viewpoint on sales out there is the fact that if you're selling someone something, what it seems like to them is that you're trying to trick them and manipulate them and do something to them to make them do something that they truly don't want to do.
Yeah.
That's the viewpoint. And real sales is nothing like that. You know what that's called, Dr. Nick? That's called being manipulative. That's called lying. That's called cheating and stealing is what that's called. That's not called sales.
Yeah.
Sales is simply a bridge between a problem and solution. And can you bridge that gap is what you're doing. And sales in the grand scheme of things is that we're not selling people, and we don't close people. We are closing and selling a product or service for people. And that semantic is very, very important, because you won't hear us ever say, oh, I closed Karen today on a $3,000 care plan. Like, you know, people who are not trained in sales say that type of thing. The people who are trained in sales, and especially our C4C docs, which I'm huge fans of because they just got it. They'll say things like, I closed chiropractic for Nancy. I closed chiropractic for X, Y, and Z. I closed a different way of life. I closed getting this person to be at baseball games for John. Like, that's how you speak, because that's actually what we're doing. Right. People are not commodities. And in chiropractic, classically, we treat them as commodities. And then as just universal law, they look at chiropractic as a commodity. And that's never going to work.
Yeah. What would you say is CloseForChiro specifically for chiropractic? When you first started, you went, to real estate and auto and pharmaceuticals and medical sales. And now it's been distilled down, I would imagine, like you guys, kind of like what I do. Instead of going and learning about marketing yourself, it's like I've done the 10,000 hours to get to the point that I'm at. And I would imagine you're probably at the same point with sales, to where explain the difference between going to somebody like Grant Cardone, who's just like a general sales technique for kind of any service-based business, and something that is specific to chiropractic, because chiropractic, as we all know, has a lot of nuance to it.
Another great question. There's concepts everywhere. And I'll just bring up like a seminar you go to, like you brought up Grant Cardone, and he's just one of many. And you go to, and he talks about sales concepts, so for example, a sales concept might be, you don't want to talk over your prospects. Sales concept, right? Let your prospect do the talking, right? Concept. So you'll hear that, you'll say, oh, that sounds good. And you'll write it down in your little notebook, and you'll go home and you'll read it again. Don't talk over your patients or your prospects. Let them do the talking. And then you get into your office with, John Smith across from you, new patient, and you go, okay, I'm going to execute and implement that concept. Doesn't really work, because there was never the application of the concept is what we're missing a lot in chiropractic. And the people who read all the books in the world, yeah, they're great. But the execution of those concepts is where we're lacking. How do you do that? How do you actually let them talk? So, for example, in our course on rapport building, everyone thinks they can build rapport. Just telling you, docs, if you're listening, you really don't know how to build rapport. What I usually see out there in the rapport building is the doc talking about themselves for the next 7 minutes when you first meet a patient. I mean, talk about the dreaded mistake. I mean, you can kiss that one goodbye. They ain't coming back. But how do you flip that for someone who's always done that? So there's a way. So what we've done is literally written down the executables. So on rapport building, this is what you ask, and then you STFU. You know what STFU stands for, Dr. Nick?
I do, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Shut the front door and just stop. Just be quiet.
Right.
And so if you have a structure of executing a concept as simple as, let your prospects speak, the executables is what we're trying to, teach our profession, because we got concepts all over the place. We talked to, you see Grant Cardone, you saw Tony Robbins, all the great communicators outside the industry. They'll never sit you down and be, okay, so when a patient comes in, you do this. Like, that's not out there.
Right.
And that's what we do.
And I think that for some people, like, they like to go figure it out for themselves. They like the concept. I'm more of a fast forward button kind of guy. And I'm like, Dan, you've already thought all the way through this, and you do it with patients in real life, and you've taught lots of people. Like, I would rather just like go and learn from somebody who has already figured it all out. So
right. But the thing is I would have 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I would have given my left limb for someone to show me what I'm teaching right now. I mean, I would have saved so much time and heartache and stress if someone did that. And for you too, I mean, you have your own clients in the marketing world. I mean, some people just want to flounder and waste time. They don't know they're doing it, or they have someone who's already done the time, and that's where our value comes in. Is that we're just saving people a ton of time.
I totally agree with that. And with both of what we do, or with what we both do, it's not just the time though, but it's like, by being more effective, you're going to make more money. If you close someone or if you close chiropractic at a 70% rate instead of a 40% rate, you not only save yourself a lot of time, but you make a whole lot more money.
Totally.
So there's a couple of things. There's a couple of like situations that I'm personally interested in, and that I think that the listeners would find value with. So I want to know, like, your suggestions to the single doctor that has their own practice and they're doing all the day one, day twos. What you would say to a doctor who has associates, who wants, maybe, the main doctor is closing at 80, 85%. They want their associates to do a lot better. And then a third scenario where I'm just interested if you know of a situation where someone has just hired a professional salesperson to do the day one, day two, and allow them to focus in on the clinical care. So let's start with most offices are going to be in that single doctor. They're doing all the day one, day twos. What do you think are the three most important things for them to really get straight to get better at their sales process?
Great. So first of all, accept sales is a thing. Number two, like with anything, there needs to be a process. It has to be a continuum. And whether you get trained by us, we'd appreciate that. If not, figure out a way of, let's say, in a day one, asking questions that gets the person to the ultimate goal, not only for the patient, but also for the doctor, right? And following that system every single time. And this is the other things we've learned very early on, is that feel ain't real. Like, we talk to so many docs every week, and we ask them, hey, so what's your any stat, like how many visits you're seeing a week? What's your close rate? What's your PVA? And if they don't have it in front of them, they'll just say, oh, it's this, it's this, it's this. Have you noticed, even in your industry, Dr. Nick, like, they don't know. They tell you what they feel, but when you get down to the numbers, it's nothing about what they felt.
Yeah.
So, and that's everybody. No one is really immune to that. So you have to track with actual metrics. So every month you have a system in place. You test the system. Month two, what do the numbers look like? How did I do? I'm at 50% close rate. Well, that sucks. Let's change something and move this over here. This is a little bit too verbose. Maybe I'm losing them here. And critically think your way through the whole day one process, for example, until over time, your stats get better and you start tracking these things. And by the way, everyone should be tracking their stats like that in every process in their business. And I know, Dr. Nick, you have an operation that's 3 hours away from you. And you're managing and you're leading your team in your office that's 3 hours away through this exact method. I mean, we never talked about it, but I can only imagine that's how you get it done. Yeah. And if you're in the practice, you have to get used to that process of measuring metrics based on a system and tweaking the system, measuring again, tweaking the system, measuring again. In marketing, it's called ABCDEFG testing, right? I mean, in marketing, as you know, like you really don't know why this worked, but it worked. You can't deny it.
Right.
Let's just roll with it. And
Right.
so you can't really, make sense of it. You just got to trust that the numbers are the numbers. This is giving me the best results. I'm going to go with it. So that's for the single doctor.
Well, let's put a pause on that. So I think that metrics is such an important thing because there are so many offices that they don't have an easy way to where the numbers flow to them. They have to go in and pull reports, or they have to dig through, spreadsheets or whatever it might be. And there are so many tools now, whether it's Blue IQ or TrackStat, to where those numbers can flow to you. But again, if you're not looking at that data on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, and then making decisions based off of it, you're just making it up, based off of how you feel, like you said.
Which is the majority of the industry, correct?
Yeah. And I can understand 10 years ago, because there just was not a really great, easy way to do it. Your front desk wouldn't keep up with the spreadsheet, blah, blah, blah. But now that they have these tools, it'll just automatically pull that data into data dashboards, that there is no excuse. And you're right, that's how I manage, because I don't know the individual patients. I just am looking at it from a 10,000-foot view of how is everything working in this department, that department, that department. So one thing that I know a lot of offices, as they start to scale, will run into is they're doing a great job. The main doctor has figured it out. They've worked on themselves. They're closing at a great rate. They bring in associates, and for whatever reason, they're not able to transfer that what they know. And I had that struggle when I first got associates, because I think that I'm good on my feet, and I can kind of feel it out, and I'm a natural salesperson, blah, blah, blah. All these things that were not true. I probably had an absolutely terrible close rate. But when I brought on associates, I wasn't great at transferring that information. Right. So what do you say to the doctor who has an associate, maybe it's their first associate? What would you recommend to them to make sure that their associate is fully equipped to be great at sales?
Well, it depends. So that the main doc is themselves trained, right? Yeah. So in our world, the main docs have gone through the program. They've trained themselves. They're still working on it. And as you know, sales is an art, so you're never done learning. You just run out of time, right? Yeah. So they're continually learning. They bring on an associate. So typically the best practices is they send their associates to us. We kick the shit out of them for them. At the same time, the main doc is equipped with the fundamentals of sales training in order for them to keep up with the associate through metrics and through keep staying on top of them, and the mental game and all those things. And that's the biggest thing in our industry is we try to train our associates without actually knowing how to do it ourselves, or they third party it out without them involved and think that's going to work out the best. It can happen. I'm not saying it hasn't happened before, but it's really rare, and it takes a very special person to get that done. It's not the middle of the bell curve. So especially with sales training, it's so organic and it's not so cut and dry. There's a lot of nuances that you got to be trained up on. And if you're not consistently working at it, you lose it, just like anything else. So for docs to have associates, get trained up, number one. When you're ready for an associate, you hire the associate. And it's a sales training. If you want them to have anything to do with new patients, that has to be an absolute non-negotiable. You got to learn how to do this.
Yeah. Anything else that, I understand, make sure that you're trained, get them trained. But is there anything that's really important in terms of maybe it's them managing it, or there are certain statistics that somebody really needs to keep an eye on?
For their associates?
Yeah.
Okay. I got you. So number one, obviously, is close rate. Mm-hmm. If you do a 2-day process, another stat we love keeping for associates is if they showed on day 1, what percentage of them showed on day 2? Now, some of you are listening to this be like, why wouldn't they? You'd be surprised. Mm-hmm. You'd be very surprised how many people don't show for the day 2. Tracking that.
What's an ideal number for that?
99% should come back for day 2. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. But we have instances where they're so ill-trained, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They totally turn them off on day one within the first 3 minutes, which is the typical time it takes.
Yeah.
And they don't return for the day two. And even if they took x-rays and they did the whole day one, they don't come back for day two. It boggles the mind of the doctor, you know. But there's a reason for that. And as the main doc looking at associate, you got to know that. The other thing is tracking, what are they recommending? So if you're doing care plans, and you're doing a 6 visit, 12 visit, 24, 36, whatever it is the doctor closing chiropractic for the best recommendations, or is the associate getting chiseled because he or she is ill-trained and recommending less than their best recommendations? There's an ethical dilemma there, number one, but more importantly is that they are allowing the patients, right, to run point on the case, as opposed to the doctor run point on the case. That is another stat that we must be keeping. And lastly, in the financials, assuming, let's say it's a straight up cash practice, is what are they collecting on average for the case? What are they collecting on average per visit, right? And which payment option are most of their patients opting for? In other words, what we teach is if you're going to do, if it's a completely cash and you're doing care plans, for example, we recommend a one-time or a 3-pay. So if you have a one-time and a 3-pay and the associate doctor is writing care plans visit to visit, that's a problem, right? Because that's not really what we want. And that's another thing that we must be tracking, like a hawk-eye, eagle-eye, day-to-day, week-to-week. And as soon as we see something, we see 2 pay-per-visit care plans for 4 visits when we know that we're running a corrective care practice, a minimum of 12. And we see that. That's a red flag if I've ever seen one. And so we hop on that right away.
Do you think there's is a prepay better than a payment plan in your mind, in that like the patient is more committed, or are those two kind of similar in your mind in terms of like the quality of the close?
They're similar. 5-10 years ago, I would have said the prepay was better, but nowadays people are committing just the same for a monthly than they do for a prepay. And in terms of payment options, we always leave it up to the doc. Like, we're not going to tell you how to collect your money. We're just going to teach you how to sell what you're selling. That's it. Even if visit to visit, we have docs that do visit to visit. Fine. I don't have a problem with how they do it. We just want to make sure that they are presenting it so that it's consumed and being accepted at the highest rate possible.
Can you talk to the people that the doctors out there that when they hear care plan, they hear 12 months, they hear 36 visits. But if you just wanted to have a 12 visit care plan, like if you're a motion palpation, ART guy, you could still do it 12 visits at a time. You're just getting them to commit to whatever that care plan is. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where we get a bad shtick because I think you were there in the Facebook group. It was amazing. So, you know, we don't have any problems with docs doing whatever they do, because we teach docs that are functional medicine docs. We teach docs that are athletic or athletic injury types of docs. We have straight chiros, you know, that are holding green books. Like, we have them all. So we don't care what you recommend, and there's no wrong or right ways based off of your training and your philosophy and what you do. So, but there has to be some agreement on what the patient is expected to do from the doctor's recommendations. So 6 visits, great. I've seen it. No problem. 12 visits, great. No problem. Even visit to visit is a care plan. You feel me? It's an agreement that, hey, Nick, I'm going to see you X, Y, and Z times for X, Y, and Z, and then we'll do a re-exam. Whatever the doc thinks up and concocts and says this is the best recommendation is a plan. So it doesn't, old school is, a year plan. No, that's someone else's plan. I don't know who that is, but that's his plan, or that's her plan, or some guy is doing 2 visit care plans. Great. That's your plan. It's such a moot point. It's irrelevant. Are they accepting the plan is what we're talking about.
I think sometimes that because they push back against that care plan idea, that they then push back against sales because they kind of clump those two together.
Agreed.
So the last situation was just if you have clients or if you've seen it, to where if a doctor is just like, I just don't want to be involved in the day 1, day 2. I want to deliver care. And this could be like a single doctor in the practice. It could be multiple doctors. But have you seen it be successful where they just hire a professional salesperson to do the day 1, day 2 process?
Yes. And they're called usually, there's a group out there that teaches this process, and it's through what's called a case manager.
Uh-huh.
Never seen it work out well.
No.
What I see in those situations are offices that require an enormous amount of new patients every month. Enormous. Their marketing budget will make you and me blush. Okay. They're pulling in triple-digit new patients every month for an operation of maybe like 2 or 3 doctors. Sometimes they're multidisciplinary. I've seen that before. But that case manager, unless they're absolute rock stars, which rarely they are, they're usually paid hourly with a small bonus, will never, ever, ever do as well as the doctor that is running point on the case to present the findings and handle the recommendations and ultimately the finances. I have seen doctors who tag team the finances, and the finances is just it's a formality. So if everything is done right, the finances, they know what's coming. They already understand. They're in. Now they just logistically have to figure out a way to get it paid, right? But hiring a salesperson, even though they're a trained salesperson, to do this I've never seen it. And if there is someone out there that is doing this great and it's working out, man, I would love to see the model, because I personally have not seen it yet.
Yeah, I think the part about tag teaming the finances is an important one, because if you've done a great job, it doesn't matter who presents to them like how you're going to pay for it.
Yep.
The problem happens when you're trying to hand off finances and you've done a piss poor job up to that point. Then your office manager is left handling objections. Correct. Because they're not committed.
Exactly. Well, and let me add to that. A lot of the handoffs to a financial CA usually gets handed off because the doctor's inability to confront the finances, because the doctor is not trained on how to confront finances. And it's amazing because the doctors that we've trained before were so afraid of the confrontation about the finances until we showed them exactly how to do it. And that little bit of structure just eases, it's such a great mental game because you just know exactly what to do. We have a saying in our group. It says, when faced with the unordinary, you do the ordinary. We also call it DWYD. You do what you do. And those little mantras help us just to stick to the same system. Again, another golf analogy. If you haven't figured, I'm a big golf fan. It's like the best players in the world, they do things the same way in the face of incredibly different situations, right? I mean, the U.S. Open was just this weekend. I mean, people watch the ball fly. I watch them before they hit the shot. And I bring out a stopwatch and I go, okay, he took 14 seconds from me, walked up to the ball till he hit it. Oh my God, 14 seconds again, 14 seconds again. That's a really hard shot. 14 seconds again. Holy crap. That's what I like to watch. And developing a routine of how you handle the systems in your practice is the same way that professional athletes handle their routines in their everyday practice. And if the chiropractors in this world can get just that, dude, game over.
Golf is such a good analogy for having a system, and whoever can implement the system the best in all situations wins. Because if you in Springfield, they have I think it's called the Corn Ferry Tour or whatever the minor leagues of the PGA. If you go and watch those guys, you could never tell me that there's a difference between that guy and Brooks Koepka or Phil Mickelson or Bryson DeChambeau. Those guys are smashing the ball, right? But there's just little differences. They're imperceptible to the normal person that separates that person from someone who makes $40 million a year between their winnings and their endorsements. And it's those little differences that allow you to connect with the patient, that allow you for the finances to be no big deal. Right. I think that's where, a system like yours is
imperceivable. You're right. So imperceivable. And if anyone walked into and I get requests, can I shadow you? Yeah, sure. They sit there in the back while I'm doing a day one. And at the end, I was like, what'd you think? I already know what they're going to say. It was like nothing. Exactly. Like you will never understand the nuances and how much work it takes on your feet and implementing a system of great and ethical salesmanship if you're not trained. And again, it's like people who think sales is not a thing. And that's why I love our holding tank, because this is our inner circle members that have gone through the training. Like we talk about all those intricate theory, higher level, even we talk quantum mechanics at times. It's just really wild. But that's the level that we should be thinking and learning about sales, because it really is like it's the linchpin to society accepting and understanding chiropractic for what it truly is, and it is the best healthcare product in the world.
Absolutely. So let's go through each one of the stages on the path to $1 million, and you just give me the one thing that at that level people should be really focused on in terms of sales and doing it the right way. So 0 to 250, they just opened their practice and they're trying to get off to a fast start. Maybe their new patients are kind of trickling in, so they're very precious. What is your recommendation to somebody who's just getting started?
Sales is a thing. That's it.
That's number one. Got to know that. 250 to 500, where they've gotten a little bit of success. They've figured some things out on their own. Now, what's the most important thing in terms of becoming more efficient?
Implement a sales system that's trackable and measurable.
And then the 500 to $1 million, they've kind of started to tap out on what they can do individually. Maybe they're starting to build their team. What do you think there?
Scaling the sales system.
And what do you mean by that?
Training your associates on number one, sales is a thing. Training them on the system of sales and measuring and tracking, and training those associates and your staff. Oh, by the way, it's very important to get your support staff, your CAs, your administrators, even your billers up on what sales is, because nothing gives people more purpose than understanding why they sell something. But scaling that to your team, so everyone under you are absolute stone cold closers for chiropractic for the right reasons, and getting more people to do that is the pathway to 500 to $1 million plus.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the staff, because I feel like that's probably just as important as the associates. So once you've hit that $1 million mark and you are wanting to stay above $1 million and continue to grow, what are those offices really focused on, and what are they great at? Well,
I just said about the 500 to $1 million. So they are coming out of the as Michael Gerber talks about in the E-Myth, out of the technician role, okay, out of the management role, and into the entrepreneur, where this person is constantly creating a new thing, a new a message, something new, always creating. And on the management side, always figuring out a way to invest in their human resources on the concepts of sales, every single day. So these people do not touch any more bodies. What they're doing is they're just, spreading the seeds of sales concepts throughout their whole entire team every single freaking day. And those are the 2 point. I mean, I don't know how high up you go, but we got people in the 10 million thing, and that's what they do all day. They show up to the office, they talk to people, they're training, they're doing all this stuff, and that's probably, we'll call it 2.5 and up.
That's what leverage is all about, is like, once you have, found a system that you really like, now it's time to get it outside of yourself and into other people, because that's the only way that you're ever going to be able to scale to $2.5 million to $10 million.
You can't do it by yourself.
No,
and that's what most chiropractors think. You can't do it by yourself. Even if you're from 0 to 250, you can't do it by yourself. And I fell into that too. I thought I can do everything myself, and you can't. You got to rely on the team behind you, the people who love you, the mentors, and like I've heard this so many times growing up. If you ask, it's amazing what people will do for you. That's so freaking true. So true.
Yeah. So Dan, this has been super valuable. I love talking about sales. It's like one thing that I probably need to get better myself with, just in leverage media. So I always am like fascinated by people that are great at it. What's the best way for somebody to find out more about CloseForChiro?
Yeah, number one is we have a fantastic private group, and I think you're a part of that group, Dr. Nick. It's on Facebook. It's called Closers Club for Chiros. If you just search that in Facebook, it should bring you right to it. It is a chiropractic only group, so we have a lot of interest in other industries, as you can imagine. Cosmetic dentists, plastic surgeons, real estate, auto. They somehow find us. Oh, funeral directors. For some reason, we got into their circle.
Right.
You don't have to turn them down, but this is only for chiropractors and chiropractors only, not students, just chiropractors that are in practice.
Not dirty marketers.
What's that?
Not dirty marketers.
If you're a dirty marketer, it happens to be a chiropractor. Technically, you're in. And then, and if you want to engage us at a higher level, book a call. We're very, very accessible. I said to myself back in the day, I was never gonna. If I ever did something like this, I was never going to do what other coaching groups and consultants did before, and make me guilt me and be completely inaccessible after you join them. And so our calendar is always blocked out for private one-on-one calls. If you want to know more about the next class coming up on July 12th, we can talk about that. Or if you have a specific problem that doesn't relate to us, you need resources, we can help you with that. We just want to help, whether or not you come with us or not.
And that the domain is CloseForChiro.com/1 on ON, the number 1, and we'll drop that link in the notes, as well as the link to the Facebook group as well. And I'll say, like, for the because you'd mentioned the holding tank, which I think is for the Facebook group for your clients. The Facebook group that you just mentioned is a free group, and I get a ton of value out of that. Just being in and just kind of like passively consuming it, I feel like you add a ton of value. You're one of the few chiropractors that sells to chiropractors that I see that does a really good job of doing content creation for doctors and doing it the right way. Like I said when we first started, I feel like I know you, even though we've never met and like hung out. And a lot of that has to do with the content that you create. And there's a lot of value just in that free group. So I would highly recommend both of those, actually.
Right. And that's a huge compliment coming from a marketer as yourself. So I appreciate that.
Marketing done the right way. You're
right.
You're building that bond without selling.
Well, can I say one thing, another thing, and this is what rubs marketers the wrong way. So marketing is when sales had a baby. So marketing to me is kind of mythical. To me, it's all sales, and marketing just happens to be the beginning of the continuum of the sales cycle, because no one markets just to market. Yeah. People market as a means to an end to get something done, right? So since Dr. Nick, you talk about, you get paid on your sales game, I think you're good, because by being a good marketer, by default in my world, you're a good salesperson, right? And you're just applying the concepts of sales in a different continuum, a different timeline, on a one-on-many atmosphere, as opposed to what we usually teach is a one-on-one atmosphere. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I also think that the better your marketing is, the easier the sales process becomes. Because again, if the person feels like they know you already and they already have an idea of what you're all about, they come in a very different way. That's why I just kind of like hammer the point of like content marketing is going to get you those ideal patients that you want. Yes. A coupon on Facebook is not going to work the same way. Right. Like none of us make our decisions for our healthcare or any of our service providers based on what coupons pop up in our Facebook feed. Usually the way that you and I are making decisions, I would imagine, are, we have kind of stumbled across like some content, or we've been recommended somebody, and that's how most of us choose to do business with people. And your ideal patients are the same way. You beating them over the head with a $21 new patient special, it's only going to be so successful. So
totally. And just I see the book behind you, A Story Brand. Yeah. Oh wow, what a read. Everyone should read that book.
Absolutely.
Especially in the post-COVID world.
Yeah.
People are so much more sensitive to bullshit.
Yeah.
People are sensitive to people who have their own agenda to push. without being sensitive to the perspective of your audience or your perspective of your prospects. That's going to be more important in the post-COVID world than ever before. My prediction for the remainder of 2021, Q4, as well as Q1 and 2 next year, is I think people are going to start contracting. It's not happy for me to say that. That's just what I think is going to happen. And when that happens, that means that your sales process, your marketing processes, the cream will rise to the top. The people who are really, really good at it are going to do really, really, really good. The people who suck are going to have some serious problems. And I don't mean to say that to scare people. I'm saying that to encourage you to be in the category of one of the best in terms of sales and marketing in chiropractic, because we cannot leave that many lives and money on the table in chiropractic. We just can't afford it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, any other closing words that I know we covered a lot here, but anything that you'd like to close it out with?
No, nothing other than I think what you're doing is awesome, Nick. I mean, it's I don't see a lot of people just really focus on inside the industry, for the betterment of our industry. I always like that. I already, if you were just in it with your own agenda, you would have tapped out years ago. I'm just letting everyone know. People come in and out of the B2B business world all the time. I know you see it in marketing. Oh my God, every day. And so just on behalf of myself and Dr. Nick, guys, I want to let you know, we're here for the long run. We're not going anywhere.
This is my end game. I'm not trying to move on to funeral directors.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Dan, I really appreciate the time. It's been awesome, getting to know you a little bit better, and hopefully we'll get to share a drink in Chicago when you're in town next.
Oh, anytime, man. We'll have to hook up. I'm there all the time.
All right, guys. We will see you on the next episode.